Okay, Richard, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. So what I wanted to get off you today was a couple are just starting out in their wedding planning, looking for a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
They don't know, they've maybe never booked a wedding photographer before. So I want to get some of the big things to consider when you're looking for a wedding photographer. The first question to start you off is, I suppose, how much coverage should you expect for a wedding day in general? Or is that a question you should be asking?
It's kind of a question you should have in your head, but also be asking your photographer, because coverage means a lot. Like we say, coverage is how long the photographer is going to be with you on the day. So some photographers will do from bridal prep up to start a meal. Some will leave before the start of the meal. So it is very important to kind of figure out all that kind of beforehand and kind of get that detail from the photographer, so that it's not a case of it's from this time to this time. Because, for example, I don't put a time on my coverage in regards to kind of, I generally tend to stay either to the start of the meal or I stay till after the first dance. And the way I put it to people is, look, the first dance could be at 10 o'clock, it could be 11 o'clock, it might be at 11:30. So that's why I don't put a time on it. But generally I kind of stay about half an hour after the first dance, and then I'll come to the couple and I'll basically say, okay, look, have we got everything? Is there anybody we've missed? We'll go about, have we missed Uncle Tommy or whatever? Do we need to go find him and stuff? Yeah. But the idea is make sure that your photographer's not going to literally just disappear at a certain time.
And do some photographers have a cutoff?
Yeah, there's quite a few. Like a lot of photographers will say from this time to this time, and it mightn't be your fault. Like weddings, traditionally weddings kind of they ran to a certain time, but these days there could be things that kind of hold up the whole show, and you could have Irish dancers, you could have singing waiters or something, and that adds an extra hour, and you don't think of that. So it is very important to kind of basically work out exactly what the coverage is going to be. Yeah. And it also dictates the price. So most photographers base their price on the coverage. So if they're there for the full day, it'll be a certain price. If they're half a day, for half price. Yeah. So coverage is something you need to literally iron out at the very start. That kind of is your baseline.
Next question I thought they might be asking, how many photos should you expect?
How long is a piece of string?
Is there an average?
There's an average of, depending on the photographer, some photographers only give 300. Some will give 1,000. Yeah. I always kind of say, don't look at the quantity, look at the quality. Okay. So I can give a photographer, I can give a couple 3,000 photographs, but a lot of them are duplicates. So when I shoot in the day, I tend to shoot in triplicate. I'll be taking photographs, a lot of photographs preparing for a photograph, and they're no good. Like they're no good to the couple because the exposure might be right or stuff like that. So I tend to shoot through a moment as well. So there could be 7 images that are virtually the same, and I'm waiting for the moment when she looks at him or that her eyes are fully open and stuff like that. Yeah. So I always say look for the quality. Yeah. So there's no kind of set number, but you should be at least getting 300. 500 is the average. Okay. If you have a photographer giving you 1,000 photographs, I'd really have to question, are they 1,000 good photographs or are they 1,000 average photographs?
Making up numbers.
They're just making up numbers.
Sound,
It's not about quantity, it's all about quality.
Next question. What's the best delivery option after a wedding, or what should couples expect? Is it a USB stick or album standard?
No, like the way things have gone, it used to be a case of you got an album and you got a USB. A lot of photographers, I actually was having this debate with another photographer yesterday. USBs are kind of the de facto. It used to be CD, now it's USB. The problem we have is that like most devices are starting to go without a USB. Your iPad doesn't have a USB socket and stuff like that. So it's become kind of more a cloud-based delivery system. And the reason we started doing that is because your USB is not guaranteed to keep the photographs. So like most USBs only last 3 to 5 years. Yeah. So in 5 years' time, your kids are starting to grow up and you decide, you know what, we'll do up a wedding album now. Yeah. You go back to the USB and the USB is gone. Yeah. It's dead. Most of my couples, actually all my couples nowadays, they get in 2 formats. So they get an online photo vault. So I don't like calling it a gallery. It displays like a gallery, but it's really a photo vault. The reason is because
for safety.
It's a backup, and it means that, you know, if you lose the USB, it's gone. Like we say, photographers aren't guaranteeing that they will keep the photographs for you. So the gallery system is like a kind of insurance policy for me, so that in 5 or 6 years' time, if a couple come to me, I still have the link, the photos are still up in the gallery, they're still safe there, and it's the exact same photos that are on the USB. It's a much safer option if they're in the cloud, because you can access on your phone, your tablet, your computer. If your computer dies, it doesn't matter, they're still in the cloud. Yeah. So it's the recommended kind of storage nowadays. Most photographers are offering it. It gives you that kind of backup facility that you can literally, a lot of the galleries now as well, they'll copy the photographs to Google Drive for you, or they'll copy to another storage option.
Yeah.
So then you've got more than one copies. But literally, that's all the digital side.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to do something with the photographs. There's no point paying a photographer, $1,500, $2,000, and all you're going to do is store them in a cloud. That's a really expensive gallery.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to do something with the photos.
Get an album
So, yeah. And it doesn't have to be a big album. It doesn't have to be a really expensive album, but print your photographs. Like we say, when you look back at photographs from 50 years ago, you see they last. There is lasting value in good quality prints. An album is the best way because at least they're all in one place.
Yeah.
So
when we're looking for a photographer and you're meeting them at a show, what should the couple be asking them about backup or albums, or should they be finding out if they do albums or back it up?
Absolutely. I think your professional full-time wedding photographer will be able to take the photographs but also deliver the photographs.
Okay.
And in all those formats. So most wedding photographers will do wedding albums. They will do prints. They will do wall art. There is kind of a certain level of photographers that are guns for hire where they literally just do digital only. So they come in, do the wedding, dump it onto a gallery, and that's it, and you never hear from them again. Yeah. You want a photographer that you can go back to in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, and say, listen, the wedding you did for us.
Yeah.
And, I had a prime example. I had a couple recently, and they got married 5 years ago. They came back to me. They now have 2 kids. So what we did with their wedding album is I asked them to send me, about 20 or 30 of photographs of the kids over the last 2 or 3 years. They're grown up.
Redo it.
And we ended up doing it as part of the wedding album. So it was like
they hadn't got a wedding album yet.
No, they hadn't got the wedding album yet. So the last 2 pages were about the story continuing, and it was all the family photographs and stuff like that. So it's a lovely kind of addition. Yeah.
What's the average time to get a wedding album? Like, are people getting it a year after the wedding, 5 years?
It's averaging about a year to 2 years. Right. The longer you leave it, the harder it is to get an album because you've got so much other costs involved. Yeah. Babies arrive and, you start looking at houses and other things. So it becomes an unnecessary cost. Yeah. The longer you leave it. A lot of people have started to kind of, you'll have family kind of do as an offer or as a gift for like the first year wedding anniversary. They've offered a gift voucher or something like that to do the wedding album, and that helps with the cost. So that's a really good idea.
Maybe if you're looking at photographers, basically look at all the options for after the wedding. Can they do albums? And then one other thing, when couples are looking online, is there any way of knowing the good from the bad as far as wedding photographers go? Because I'm sure everyone can get 10 or 20 good photos and put them online and they look. Is there any,
I always say look for a full wedding. You need, like, what photographers put up is the best of the best. Yeah, yeah. And what you're seeing is 10% of a wedding. You're never seeing the full 100%. You're seeing basically the highlights, the best bits. And that's fine because like that's what photographers have to do because they want to show people the best of their work. Yeah. But you want to see everything else. Like one thing, I always look back, like in 5 years' time, when I talk to a bride, I want her to kind of come back to me and say her best photograph was a photograph of her aunt who's passed away. Yeah. And that is the most meaningful photograph to her. It's all about kind of the longer after the wedding, those photographs become extremely valuable for the older generation and for the younger generation because they're growing up and you're seeing them as kids. Yeah. So have a look at kind of a full wedding by a photographer. Yeah. Have a look at a wedding album because you need to be able to. It's one thing seeing the photographs digitally, but you need to see how they look like in a print. Because they're 2 different things. What you see on a screen is like a big fancy iPhone. You're seeing the best quality screen. But when you want to see the print, you need to see that the print is as glorious as the photograph.
So the main things to consider when booking a wedding photographer, to recap, how much coverage you get on the day, whether they have a certain cutoff point, which might be a bad idea because if your wedding runs late, you might miss some things at the end. Roughly, how many photos you get, but you're saying quality doesn't really, it doesn't mean, or quantity doesn't mean quality. Yeah,
exactly.
So, and the average there is about 500. Yeah. The delivery options after, can they store it in the cloud for you? Can they do an album? Yeah. Or is it just USB and kind of walk away? And then online to make sure if you find a photographer that looks good, just ask them, can you see a full wedding?
Yeah. I highly recommend go meet your wedding photographer. This is somebody who's going to be by your side for 80% of the day. Yeah. And you need to know you can get along with them.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
You know, and the other thing as well is you need to make sure that's the photographer that's going to be with you on the day. So there's a lot of photographers that might have 3 or 4 photographers.
That'd be a good thing about a wedding fair, because you get to meet them in person.
Absolutely,
and you'll know straight away if you gel. Whereas if you're booking a wedding photographer online, obviously you don't know what they're like.
You don't know. You're just going everything on a website.
So just arrange a meeting before you hand over a deposit and secure the date.
Well, you don't have to meet them, but definitely meet them literally either. If the problem is that dates are becoming very kind of hard to get. So like we'll say I'm 90% booked for this year. You know, and if somebody is coming to me for to book to pick a date and I have 4 or 5 inquiries, I can't hold that date. So I always say, look, and most photographers will give you a scenario where you can pay the deposit until you meet them. They'll hold the date for you. Yeah. And then basically once you confirm and you sign a booking form, that's another really important thing is when you do book your photographer, make sure you got some sort of a contract.
Yeah.
Because
outlining the coverage.
Outlining the coverage, exactly what you're getting, that they're going to be the photographer on the day, and here's what happens if it rains, and here's what happens, you know, if he gets sick and stuff like that. You know, you need something. So then you've that extra security that you know he's going to show up on the day.
Yeah. Or she.
Sorry.
Okay, Richard, thanks for coming in and giving all that free advice. So just before you go, let our viewers and listeners know where they can find out more about you.
Best place, I suppose, is on the web, richardmccarthy.ie, or you can use Sligo Wedding Photographer.ie. You can also catch me on social media. The tag, I think, is Richard McCarthy Photo.
Okay, and they can see samples of your work and stuff. Get in touch and for quotes and availability.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for coming in again, and talk to you soon.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.